share my screen with you guys to go through the session. Okay, so like today's session is going to be really interesting. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, like functions, and you can see later that it can help you greatly in terms of like encapsulating like your code and make it cleaner and simpler. So let's get started. So I'm going just to before to start, I think Pooja wants to create a poll for you guys, so you can share your feedback with us, and then after that I'm going to continue with the session. Okay, great. So thank you guys for sharing your feedback. And then I think like the team will definitely go through it and then try like to reflect it in the future. So today's session overview is, it seems like we have a small things to talk about, but you will see it's not. So first of all, we talk about like a cool application of software engineering in the beginning of our session. Then we talk about like a short like tip or trick on how to like how the program can understand like the mouse clicks, and then we will talk about like the functions, and that is very interesting. Okay, so oops, sorry. Okay, so just to let you know guys, at the end of this session we're going to have a game design club presentation. So it's going to be like about 20-minute presentation, and if you stay, you can get 25 inner points. So it should be very interesting. So I encourage you to stay. Okay. So this is just one of like the cool application of software engineering / computer science or like / machine learning thing. So the idea is like the problem here is that like companies like who are like working on medicines, for example, right? If they want like to understand like how much like a drug is effective, and they want like to measure or calculate like the stickiness of the drug to a protein. However, it is hard. So a group of team in MIT, they created like these machine learning models, which is like a top in computer science, that can understand like how to calculate this stickiness in a very short amount of time, right? So we are not saying that what you are learning here can be applied like directly to this problem. Of course, you need some other concepts, some other like techniques and knowledge. However, you need to know programming to implement that idea, right? In a very good and efficient way. Ooh. Okay. So now we're going to just do a quick review on the range. So if you remember, range, it was some sort of like a list of numbers, right? From 0, because in Python, the index starts from 0 to 1 less than the length of that list, right? For example, if the list has like, for example, in this case has, let's see, 5 numbers, right? So the range of 5 creates something like this, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So it is important to know that there are some differences between list and range, so they are not completely the same. So for those who are interested, right, I'm just going to give you like a quick tip after reviewing these two parts, so you can do some sort of like research on your own later if you like. So first, let's try this example here. So for I in range 5, print the I is I, right? So here, if I print it, you see I0, I is 1, 2, 3, 4. It just goes through like all the indexes from 0 to 4 and try to print them, right? So another thing is that sometimes we need the index to go through the elements of the list. For example, if you have log and size, we can go through them, right? So for example, here in this case, let's see if I can copy this completely. Yeah, I can. Can I copy? Oops. I can't copy it probably. Okay, doesn't matter. So here we have like 2 lists, and then you just go through like the indexes from 0 to 4, and then for example, at index 0, which is like the beginning of like the first element of the list, the log of 0 would be 40. So 40 for the circle, and the size at index 0 would be 12. So you create a circle at the coordinates of 40 with a diameter of 12, right? So by iterating through this for loop, you can create different circles with different, like at different locations with different sizes, right? So the one thing that I mentioned is that like the difference between range and list is that if you create like the range of, for example, 5, right? It says range of 0 and 5, right? So I mean that if you like even like do x0, you get like 0, right? If you get like x1, you get x1, right? But there is something different here. So for example, let me try this. Let's see what is the type of x. Is it list or no? So the type gives you like the list of the variable. So it is range, right? But if you create a list from 0 to 5, right? Like I mean from 0 to 4, which is like the same as range 5, the type of x becomes list, right? Again, this is similar to list of range 5, right? But the important thing here is that if you want to check it out later, you can see if I create a 1 million, a range with size 1 million, and a list with the same size, right? Then there is this thing. Don't worry about it, but I'm just trying to show you something here. So this size get size of show you like the amount of memory that is occupied by this variable, right? Because these numbers are somewhere in the computer, right? So they are not in the air. So when you assign these values to the variable, they are stored in some sort of hardware, right? So now if I get the size of x, it is only 48 bytes. But if I get the size of y, it's really big, right? So why? I'm not going to talk about that, but if you're interested, you can do some sort of like search later to see what's the difference between list and range. So let's get the next slide. So here we talk about like mouse down, right? So if you remember, if previously we have this thing, it was mouse is pressed, right? That was a Boolean variable, right? It was either true or false, right? So you can use it in an if condition, right? Now we have something different. We have mouse down, which can act, for example, as a function, right? So it can detect whether, for example, a function is, so for example, if a mouse is pressed or not, right? So for one time, right? Only once. This is just another way to detect like if a mouse is pressed, and we can use it like in different ways. We will see shortly. So here we have this def mouse down, right? And then you can create like our function, like this notation, like def mouse down. And then we can have like our circle, and then it like create like a circle whenever like we press the button. So for example, let's do it here. I have the same thing, size background, the side white. The background is blue, doesn't matter. I'm not sure if it's blue or not, but that's okay. I don't care about the draw, so I can just do path if you like. Then I have mouse down. So the path, for those who are interested, the path is something that you just give it to the function if you don't want like if you want like it to do nothing, right? So you don't want to. I don't want to, for example, get rid of the function draw here. I don't want to have it, but I don't want it to do anything. So just say pass, and then get mouse down. Then I have circle, I have mouse X, mouse Y, and 50. Oops. Okay. So I think this is too much for my window because I'm trying to show things side by side. I'm going to make it smaller. Okay. So for example, if I click mouse here, so you can see just do it once, right? And another circle, just one time, right? You don't need to press it. You just want to click it and then that's it. So I think you are good here. So now we want to talk about the functions. So functions are, I think, very important because it can help you to, as I said before, to try to make your code cleaner and better. So let's talk about it. So what is function? So for example, let's for example talk about like a juicer, right? So if you put like orange there, you get orange juice, right? But for example, you cannot like put I mean that if for example maybe I don't know, like put apple, you get apple juice, right? But if you put like book, you don't get like book juice, right? So the function usually do a particular thing with some sort of like particular like input. If they need, for example, that sort of input. So the function in programming is similar to that. So it's like you are trying like to encapsulate or wrap a bunch of code, right? And you want like to put it under like under like the umbrella of like a function. And whenever you want to do those tasks that are included in that function, you just need to call that function, and that function take care of the rest. So instead of doing things like again and again in different parts of the code, let's say you want to do something in different parts of the code, right? I'm not talking about an automatic thing, right? If you want to do something automatically for like 100 items all together, you use for loop, right? But I'm talking about, let's say you have like 1,000 line of code, you want trying, for example, you want to do some stuff in the beginning of the code, but you want to do the same thing in the middle of the code and at the end of the code, right? For example, then in that case, you can just put them into one function, and then whenever you want to do those lines of code, you can just call that function. And then we'll talk about that more in the upcoming slides, so don't worry. So again, the point here is that you want to reuse that blocks of code, which is wrapped in a function again and again, right? So it makes like our code shorter, cleaner, and easier to read, right, for others. And whenever you want to use or do a certain task, you can just call that function. And we'll talk about like what does call mean, right? So don't worry, we'll talk about that. So now here's just another example. So let's say, for example, you have a car, right? So you have like a gas pedal that moves forward. You have like a steering wheel. You want like to change direction, right? You have like the brake pedal that slow down, right? So you can see you have like different things with different functionality, right? So the car itself is a very complex system, but now you can see that it can be simplified, right? If you notice each of these functions separately. So that would like, for example, for the gas thing. So for example, if you want like to speed up, right? What you do is you just try to press press the gas, right? But what's happening here is that like the gas flow increases, then the engine burns harder, right? The wheel spins with more forces, and the car moves faster, right? So the input was that your foot presses the pedal, and the output was the car moves faster, right? So it's like a function. So you give something as input, and you get something as output. This is like so if, for example, someone asks you, what does this function or this pressing the gas do, you don't need to go through all the steps of the task. Of course, if the reader wants to know exactly what's happening behind the scene, right? So they need to understand the details. But if you want to quickly tell them what's happening, you can say, okay, if you give this sort of input, the output would be, for example, in this case, the car moves faster, right? So maybe you as the user are interested in the application or of that function, right? Maybe you don't need to know about all the details, right? Or maybe another user just wants to use that function, right? Without paying attention to the details. So that's fine. So that is one of like the benefit of the function, right? So as long as the function works correctly, you don't need to worry about what's happening behind the scene. You just provide your input and then you got whatever you're looking for as the output, right? Okay. So now let's take a look at what functions we have used so far. So for example, the print is one of the functions. It's actually a built-in function, right? In the Python, like the Python understands the print, right? You have the circle, fill style, and the background. So these functions are written specifically for these sessions, right? So I mean that if, for example, you put circle here, you shouldn't get anything. I think you should get, I haven't tried, but I think you should get error. Because name circle is not defined, right? Because these functions are wrote for this series of sessions to make it easier for you to work with the programming without getting into trouble of like understanding what's happening behind these functions, right? So to understand some sort of basics. But now we want just to say that these things that you used before are just some sort of functions that were written by some folks for this program. So kudos to those guys. So now let's talk about some other things. So far we talked about like the function, and so for example, I told you you have to provide input, you have to provide output, right? But sometimes the function programming might be a little bit different. For example, you may see something like this. Let me put it here. You may see something like this. So for example, def my function. I'll talk about like what is like this, what is this. I'll talk about that. But then nothing, right? So you have no input, no output. But I'm just saying that we are trying just to give you some sort of idea about like how the function works. When I talk about like you need to provide input and output, right? It's not, but that is not always the case. So sometimes you don't need to provide input, and sometimes you don't even have output, right? Which makes like the function useless. But I'm just saying that this is part. So here, for example, in this case, you can see sometimes the function returns something, right? So you ask some function to do something, and you want it to return a value for you. So for example, the length one we used before, right? That's the length of this, right? So this is like a built-in function that is already understood by the Python itself. So the Python understands length, right? So whenever I like to put len, the Python knows that this is like a function, and the function gets the list as the input, right? And returns something. What is that? This is the length of that list, right? So for example, I can say if I have my list as 110 -1, right? So the length of this list is 3, of course, right? But I cannot use this function returns 3, right? But I cannot use this 3 later, right? How can I use it? I have to assign it to a variable, right? So I can say, okay, so let's call it like list length, or any other name that you like. So now I can use this, for example, here. I can say, okay, for I in range of the list length, do something, right? So for example, print, I don't know, list I. So the element of the list at index I. Right? So 110 -1. So it just goes to them. Right? So this function, len, gets the input list, return a value, which is like this, return a value, which is the length of the list. Now by doing list length equal this, I assign the returned value to this variable. So I store it, so I can use it later. So we have the same thing here. So random num is equal random 10, right? So random 10 generates, right, a random number, But if you want to use it, to use this returned value, right, you can assign it to a variable. Now, so far we talked about like the function that we saw before. We also talked about like some of like the built-in functions and the functions that use in this series of sessions. But that is not the end of the story. In fact, you can create your own functions. And to do that, you need to understand how to like what are like the main components of the function. So the main component of the functions are shown here. So I mean that we will talk about that more, but there is def, right, which stands for definition, that you're trying to define a function, right? You're trying to create a function. And this is the name of the function, right? So the name of the function is actually like whatever name that you like, right? It is recommended using like a name that can some sort of like give the reader the idea of what the function does, right? So you can use any name you like similar to the name for the variable, but it's better to make a choose a very good name for the function. And then you have like the function body. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about like these parentheses here, why it is empty. So we'll talk about that. But for example, here, your function must have the def, which is a way that you tell the computer, hey, I'm trying to create a function. And this is the name of the function. And this is where you can provide parameters. And these parameters are optional, right? Some functions have parameters, some functions don't. And we'll talk about that. But this is like the general structure. So now, for example, let's say you want to create like this picture, right? So there is like this window, you have 5 like houses here, right? Or maybe 6 or whatever. And then if you take a look at the right, you can see that this is a really huge code, right? It's not clear. I mean, if you look at this, like there are a lot of numbers. It's really disgusting, right? I mean that it's not easy to read. If you want like to read it later, you may get headache, right? But now I'm not talking about right now how we can convert it to a format like a code that uses function. But I just want us to show you that if you use function, like what will happen. So here, this is another version that does the same thing, right? But it is really cleaner, right? So you can see it's just really, I mean, that you can feel what's happening. You can say, it says draw house at 40, and then if you take a look at draw house, for example, here, and then say XY, right? So probably you feel that, okay, so probably this is like the coordinates. I'm not sure about like what coordinates, but this is some sort of coordinates, right? But so you don't need to worry about like how we are doing this, but it's just a way to show you like how we can use function to make our code clear and more readable. So this is like 4 questions here. And then, so this is like about the functions. 1 of them is true. 3 of them are true. 1 of them is false. So let's see if you can choose the correct answer.
I'll give it 10 more seconds.
Okay, perfect. So let's go through like the options here. So functions can be utilized as a reusable chunk of code. Yes, this is correct, because it is not false, right? Because if you take a look at the previous example, right, you see that we have the draw house, right? And as I said before, if, for example, you want to do a certain task, like in parts of the code, you can just encapsulate them in one function and then call that function or use or reuse that function in those parts of code by calling that function, right? So you can reuse it. And then the second option is function should be used to perform one specific action. Yes, so remember like the juicer thing, right? So the juicer, for example, if you put, for example, the fruit, it gives you like the juice of the fruit, right? If you, I don't know, like put a cookie inside, right? It doesn't do anything, right? So usually like used to perform one specific action. And like the last option, there is no limit on how many times you can call a function. Yes, right? So you can call it like as many times as you want, right? This function can only be called in draw, no, right? For example, here you can see I just create like the function myself here, right? It works. I mean, if it doesn't work, I should have seen like an error or something like that, right? So the functions can be defined anywhere, right? Good. Okay. So now let's talk more about the structure of the function. So we talked about the def, which is like the definition. You need that. We talked about the name, like the name of the function, right? So it is required. The def is required because we want like to tell the computer that are trying to create a function. The parameters here and this value and the return value, these are optionals. So for example, your functions may not have any parameters, right? No input, right? So basically this is input if you want to like if you are comfortable with input output thing. So you can think of parameters as the input, right? That is provided by the user. And this is, for example, the output, right? Not the output, but like thing that is returned by the function, right? So sometimes your function may not return something, but just does something. So let me, for example, get a simple example here. So let's say, for example, I have this, right? Name of the function is, this is like not a good name, but I'm just trying just to create something. So it's like a simple example, right? Okay, so let's see. Make it better. So print something, right? And then you see, I don't provide any input because that is not required. That is optional. And then I don't even have to return a value. I can just say this function print something, right? So print, let's say, I don't know, something, right? And then you say, okay, so what's happening? It doesn't print anything. Yes, because we just create a function that prints something, right? So it's just like something that is already there. So whenever you want to use it, you have to call it. So I will talk about that. But let me just use it here so you can see that if I do this, right, it just prints something, right? But now if you remember, I talked about it in the like previous slides, that if, for example, the length as the length of the list, return the length of the list, right? And you assign it to a variable, right? But if I assign this thing, right, which is some sort of like the output of the function to a variable, and then try to print X, it says none, right? And then the question is, okay, so why I'm seeing something? Because whenever you call this function, which means you are just trying to use the name of the function, right, like this, with the same format, and since it doesn't have any input, you cannot say print something, right? You want to show that this is a function. So you provide this, but with empty, like with nothing here, right? So whenever the computer reads this line, it tries to perform this from the right side, right? And assign the result to the left side, right? So whenever the computer reads this part, it says print something, it tries to run the function. So by running the function, means that going through the function, right? So it goes through the function, it prints something. So you can see the something here, right? But it doesn't return anything, right? Because the return value, as I said, is optional, right? Because it doesn't return anything, it actually like none. So that is why when I try to print X after that line, it says none because I didn't return anything, right? We will talk about that later. But the important thing to know here is that the function has def, the name. Both of these things are mandatory and required. The parameters as the input are optional. The return value is also optional, right? And pay attention here that you have indent, right? You have indentation. So if you, for example, you want to create a function like this, you cannot do something like that, right? If you remember, I said that whenever you create some sort of like a block of code that are related to each other, the Python understands that by looking for the indent, right? So if you remember, for example, for the for, we have the indent, right? Whenever you want to create like here, I have this here. So for the for, I have the indent. For the if condition, whenever you have the if condition and you want like to if the condition becomes true to do something or else to not do something, you have indent, right? So the same is true for function. So if you have like the def if you want to create a function, you have to create a indent, right? So you can write something, and whenever you are done, you can just go back to the beginning of the line, right? You can write your code, right? This is not included in the function. However, I think it might be a better idea to just leave a blank line just to make it more readable. That's it. So, right? So there is no technical issue here. Just want to make it more readable. Just create a space and then write the rest of your code. Okay. So I'm just. Okay, we talk about that. We talk about the name, parameters, and then all of that. I think that we're good to go here. Okay. So we also talk about that, right? So if you have like the function, the name is greeting here. You need that def. Def is always the same. You have like to use the same keyword all the time. Def. The greeting is the name of the function. And then this function just prints something, right? Again, by running that, it doesn't print something. You have to call that. So if I say def greeting, print hello, it doesn't do anything, right? If I run it by shift enter, it doesn't do anything, right? But if I call this function, now say greeting, again, if you want to computer know that this is a function, you cannot just run this. You have to say that, okay, this is a function, but since the function has no parameter, I'll just leave it empty. So now it says hello, right? So you have to call it, but call it means that you have to write the name again with this format, so the computer knows that you are referring to this function. So the computer goes to this block of function and then runs the code. So this is like, again, simple example, like you have a greeting, you have like print hello everyone, and then you want like to run it. But I think that you are good to go here. Okay. So one tip here is that if you want like to do this function here inside our cell for the Ignite, where you want like to create like the cool pictures and images, you have to create your functions outside of the draw and the setup, right? So you just create your functions here, not inside of it. These are functions themselves. So you want to create your functions here, but if you want to use them, you can just use them here, right? You say, hey, mouse down, whatever, right? Or does something, right? So whatever. I'm just saying that if you want like to create your function, you have to create your function outside of these two blocks. By block, I mean that there is an indent, right? So whenever there is no indent, means that you are outside of the block. And then this is for the draw function, you are inside that block. And then here, you have to create your function outside of that block, right from the beginning of the cell. Okay. So I talk about like the calling the function that you just write the name and then it just runs, right? So let's try this here. Let's see if I can just copy it really fast. I don't want to. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to make it smaller. Background. And then you see, and don't worry, you don't need to, it's really important. You don't need to create a function before the setup, right? If you run this cell, because it's just all in the same cell, the computer understands that, okay, this is a greeting, I'm going just to use this function here. But it should be okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is like the window, right? That is created by draw. And then you see it says, hello, everyone. This is just when this code runs, right? This function is called and the function print hello, everyone. Okay, so I think that Pooja is going to send you to the breakout room. You are going to use the function to create this cool picture. Different circles and then different size, different colors. So enjoy. I'll see you shortly. Oh. Okay. Let's see.
I think everyone should be back.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Hello. Okay, so okay, let's get back to our exercise. Okay, so here's the thing. So you see there are some small like circles inside another circles going on here. So that is like what happens if you do like mouse is pressed, right? So if you do mouse is pressed, you create exactly like this because like the computer doesn't understand if you click it once because it just feels your finger and then maybe create like two circles with the same like center, right? At the same time. So if you want like to create just a different shape than this one, not this one, but a different shape that only creates just one circle, not two circles together, I can do something like this. So I can have the setup thing, right? Then I have the draw. And since I don't want to do anything with draw, I can just pass it, right? So it's similar to this case. So let me show you. So it's similar to, okay, so it's similar to this one, right? So you create this def mouse down outside of the draw, right? And you want to use it, right? So what's happening here is that you create a function to create a random circle, right? Of course, you can do anything. You can just say, I want to add 10 or 25 or 30, right? So you create like a function to create random circles. And then you create another function, which is mouse down. You know, like the mouse down is recognized, right? Already by the Ignite, right? So when you say mouse down, it is recognized by the Ignite. And you don't need to put it inside the draw. You have to put it outside of the draw. And inside the function, whenever you click the mouse, the function knows, hey, the mouse down is clicked. So it's going to run this function. But the function itself is going to run another function, which is this one, right? So, by the way, this is like, this might be a little bit like weird. So a better thing might be something like that. So, I can say mouse down, right? Create random circles. That's it. Okay, cool. By the way, if you want like to create something like the same thing, exactly what provided here, which has like two circles maybe together, it means that you cannot just click once, right? I mean, if you click once, the computer doesn't understand that, right? So then you have like to do if mouse is pressed, right? and then call this function. And this function is already recognized by the Ignite, so I'm not going to use this function because this name is already recognized by the Ignite itself. So I'm going to use a new name, for example, this one. Draw random circles for me. By the way, this is like a long function. You don't need to use this name. But if I put it here, now you can see it's like the same as this one. Okay, perfect. So let's get back to our slides. So I want to talk about the parameters. So why should I provide parameters, right? You don't have to, right? As I said before, it is optional. But sometimes, let me just make it clear because I don't want to get distracted by this one. Okay. So again, why should I provide parameters? Because sometimes you need more flexibility, right? You don't want your function to do one thing. You want it to be flexible. So if you change a parameter, you want to get different outputs, right? So for example, let's say you want a function that, for example, add 2 by 2, right? So you can say def add 2 and 2. Of course, this is like a name, right? You can use any name. So I can say, let's say print 2 plus 2, right? And then say, hey, this works, right? Because if I call this, I can see 4, right? But this is not generalized, right? It is only works for 2 and 2. Let's say you want to add any 2 numbers, right? So why should you limit yourself with 2 and 2? So you can say add numbers, and then you can provide the parameters. You can provide the inputs. You say, okay, I provide 2 numbers for you, A and B, right? Or any other name, number 1, number 2, right? Then you can add them. Right? Now, if I run this, add numbers, if I run this, what should I get? Error, right? Why? Because I need parameters now, right? I say that I need parameters, but I provide nothing here, right? So it makes sense to get error. So if you look at the error, it is a good idea to read the errors, right? So it can help you to understand how you can debug or find a problem. It says add numbers, missing 2 required positional arguments. So so let's forget about the positional arguments for now. It says missing 2 required arguments. So arguments is the same as parameters. So you have 2 parameters here or 2 required arguments, and these are missing here, right? So you have to provide them. So it says 2 and 3. So add numbers 2 and 3 is 5, right? So you make the function general, right? So you don't need to just do 2 and 2. You can provide your parameters, whatever you like, and then you add them, right? Of course, like this addition is for numbers, right? For example, if you add, I don't know, let's say, if you add 2 and a list, right? So I think the computer should understand that, right? It says unsupported operand types, right? Of course, because you want to add them, right? So you cannot provide any parameters or any input, right? So you should be, so you as a user, you are the one who create the functions or who try to understand or use the functions. So you are responsible to know that what kind of input you should use for the function, right? That input should make sense for that function. Okay, so here, this is just another example. It says def add A and B, sum A and B prime sum, right? So again, this is like the same as this one. Instead of just printing num1 and num2, you can just assign it to just the total sum. And then print the total sum. It's the same, right? I just try to get rid of this redundant temporary variable, right? Because it's just temporary, right? You just put the value there and then you print it, right? So you can just do 2 and 10, you get again 12, right? So this works. Perfect. So let's see what's happening here. So for example, here we have like this def setup, right? And then we have the add. But what is add? We define it here, right? Again, outside of the setup or draw, right? So you have this function, which is the same as this one, add numbers. you create this function, and then you call this function add. But since you have parameters now, so you need to provide the parameters. You need to provide the values for those parameters, right? So it says 3 and 5, right? So for example, in this case, 3 means the A is 3, the 5 means B is 5, right? So now if you provide add 3 and 5, the function, like the computer, goes and run the function, which is adds. It sees 3 instead of A, instead of B, it sees 5. Then, so it knows that A is 3, B is 5 now. So sum is 3 and 5. So it runs this. 3 and 5 is 8. 8 is assigned to sum. Then goes here, print sum, and then you can see the output. And this is very interesting. So the print itself, we talk about that. It is a function, right? So now you can see that inside of this function, I call another function, right? But since this is like a built-in function, you may not notice that. But this is just a function. So inside this function, you call this function to print it. And the same here. So inside this function, you call this function size to create something, which is the window. Then you call this function to add them. But this function itself do something, does some sort of task, and then call another function, which is print, and print that, right? So it would be a good idea to track like the way the computer thinks, right? Or reads the code, right? So we're going to have a quick question 2 here. So Pooja is going to create a poll for you guys. So try to choose the best answer to fill the blank 1 and blank 2 here.
I'll give it 15 more seconds. All right, I think it's closed.
Okay, so let's see what's happening here. So in this case, I have the setup, I have the blank of something. So when you see this, you have answers here. You should guess that this should be like a function. So if it is a function, right? Of course, it can be class, but we don't want to talk about that. But here, like the function with the input 10.32, right? The other function that we have here is divide by 3, right? So when you want to call that function or use the function, you need to use that, right? The name of the function, not the function, like not the word function, but the name of the function you use in your program, in your code. So blank 1 would be divided by 3, right? So now divide by 3 of 10.32, which means that input is 10.32. So the blank 2 would be 10.32, like its value, right? But let's see what this function do. It says divide by 3. So it gives the idea that it's going to divide a number or something by 3, right? Now, if you read code, it says number divided by 3 is going to be into the result, then print result. So so this part is fine, like the result and then print result is fine. But what's number here, right? It should be defined somewhere, right? And you cannot see anywhere that I used like the code used number before. So this number should be the input of this function, right? So whenever it says divide by 3 of 10.32, that means number is 10.32, it will be divided by 3, and then the result would be 10.30 divided by 3, and then it would print the result. Okay. So far, we talk about like the function, we talk about like returning the length of the list. What happens when you like length of the list, return a value, this is the length of the list, and then you can assign it to a variable to use it. But let's see how we can use it in our function. So let's say you want to create your function and you want to return a value. So it's simple. Just say def, which is known by the Python programming language. The name of the function, which is one that you decide, right? So it's your name, so you can choose whatever name you like. And then we have parameters, which is optional. Then we have return value, right? So this part, the blue one, return, is a keyword, right, that is understood by the Python programming language, right? The value is what you provide yourself, right? So for example, let's do it here. I'm just trying to create something. So let's say def greeting, right? Or let's say def, let's do it here. Yeah, here. So def add two numbers or add numbers. Let's say I don't want to print the sum, right? Because if I print it, I can see it, but I cannot use it, right? So let's see it here. So let's say if I run it, it says 12, but let's say I want to use this number later, x, right? And then I say print x plus 3, right? It says supported operand, none, type int, right? And it highlighted this part. It means the int is 3, the none is the first one, none, which means that the x none. You can also put x and see that. After running this code, which runs the print, the next part, the next actually code that should be executed is when you want to assign the return value to x, but there is nothing is being returned here. Just print something, right? But if I want to return something, say, okay, return, right? It is a keyword which is known, like understood by the Python itself, right? So return what? Return, in this case, I want to return, for example, this value. Now, in this case, if I do this, I don't have any print statement, right? So I don't see anything like 12 because I do not print it. If I remove this, I shouldn't see it, right? But now if I try to print x, it shouldn't be none, right? Let's do it here, in the same cell. If I print it, since I already in the function did the return, so whenever the computer runs this code, this line of the code, this part, it assigns the summation into this total sum, and then this part return the total sum. This part is just 12. Then I will assign 12 to x. So now if I run this, it should be 12, right? Perfect. By the way, no one says that you cannot do print. You can, of course, do print. This printing, right? Of course, if you run this, so whenever the function runs this code, this is printing, and then it's return the value, which is going to be 12, assigned to this x, and then you put x, right? So of course you can do a print again if you like. Okay. So this is just example, right? So we have like this function that doesn't have parameter, right? But it has return. So it just says plus 2. So similar to the one I mentioned earlier. So it's 2 and 2, I think, or add 2 and 2. It says like 2 plus 2, you just add them together and just return 4 all the time, right? So you say x is 2 plus 2, at least you return a value, so you should be fine. So this return 4, the 4 will be assigned to x. So 4 plus 1 should print 5. Of course, you can do it at home. Like so. Our example is this one that you need the parameter side lengths, right? You multiply it to itself, you return it, right? And then here you are going to use it. So it says area is calculate a square area 2. So for example, let's say you have a square with a side length 2. What is this area? It's just its side length times its side length, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. these are some examples that you can try later on your own, but it should be easy. It's the same concept. Okay, so Pooja is going to send you to breakout room to work on this cool exercise. Going to share my screen again. So there we go. So that was the exercise that we wanted to create a function called average, right? And what's happening is that it's return the average of input x and y, which is like the mouse of x and y. So I mean, you are going to use that later, but you don't need to specify that for the function. So in the function average, you can just say, okay, I have two numbers. I'm going just to take the average, right? You add them, you divide it by 2. If you think it is hard to read, you can create something like that. You can say average value, and then return average value, right? It does the same thing, right? And then it says when mouse is pressed, right? So it's different than mouse is down. So mouse down function just detects if you click on one time, right? But you can, for example, say if mouse is pressed, right? If you want to do it one by one, like if you want us to do it once, and you can just do something like that. Right? And then you can do the same thing. So you can have this one and have this. So what's happening here is that it only detects when you click the mouse once. So you click it, you click it, you click it. It's hard. I mean, you cannot just press it and then drag it, right? It works, but it's, I think that takes time. Actually, it doesn't work. So it just detects whenever you like to press down the mouse once. But if you want like to keep drawing when as long as you press the mouse, then you have like to do if mouse is pressed, which is the Boolean value, right? It's not a function. It's true or false. So it's true when you press the mouse, right? And what's happening is that it's take the average of the coordinates of the mouse, right? The cursor, and then it creates a circle with the same coordinates. So wherever your cursor is, it will be the center of your circle, mouse x, mouse y, and the diameter would be the average. So it makes sense that since your window starts from 0, 0 from top left to the bottom, which has like the bottom right has the highest x and y. So if I run this, I should get a small circle here. And as I move towards the bottom right, I should get larger circle, right? So it might be a good idea to think about what's happening in the function so you understand like the result, right? Yeah, that's it. So let's talk about one last thing here, which is the global. So if you remember, we used global before, right? So if you want like to change something globally, right? Because this ignite draw try to run the program again and again, right? So for example, this function try to run the program again and again. So if you, for example, provide the value here, it's going to be reset to that value, right? Or same as function, right? But if you want just to get access to global variable, you can do the same thing as we did before. You can just use global keyword, global health. So whenever you see this, it means that the computer knows that it has to go back and reach to this value health 5 here, and then work with this. And then it says health -1, it's updated health, and then check health, right? So we are going to send you guys to breakout room for the final exercises. Hello again, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the session. I think it's not. It's. I mean, I don't think it's a easy session. It was a little bit difficult for beginners. So please take your time, go through the slides, do your own practice in your time, and you will get better, definitely. So right now, I'm going to just leave you guys with a very cool team from Game Design Club. They're going to talk about like the project, and then I hope that you enjoy. So Jason, you want to start?
Yes. Hello, guys. How's it going? Hope you're all doing well. Let me just share my screen here. There you go. Can y'all see this all right? Just to double check. Oh, you don't want to know what my name is. Okay. Yes. Okay, fantastic. Let me just right there. So yes, hello everybody. My name is Jason. My partner right here is Tung. We are a couple of junior executives from the University of Calgary's Game Design Club, and we're just here to talk to y'all about the stuff we do and the stuff that we are sharing with our members. So first off, quick introductions in detail. My name is Jason Cabuenas. I am a second-year drama major with a computer science minor at the University of Calgary. Interesting combination, I know, I've had that talk before. Now, I specialize in game design, and I have been designing games since the 9th grade. I love games, and you can see some of my projects down below right here, Hack Scratchers and Overlord's Pungeon, that I've collaborated with in the design aspect of things a long time ago now. And if y'all are interested in what I help design in or make, my itch is down below if y'all are interested in that.
Hi there, I'm Tung. I'm also like a junior exec at the Game Design Club. I'm currently a second-year comp sci student at the University of Calgary, and I'm mainly like a game programmer. But now that I tackle a bit in 2D art, these are some of the game I have helped with programming, and more of those can be found on my itch.io.
So first off, let's start with the basic statement of what we actually are. What is this club? Well, this is a club that facilitates on helping people in the various game development disciplines through game development and such. And we do this by our community events, or rather just just some stuff together because we're more like friends. So what sort of events are these? So well, we have some weekly meetings that happen every Tuesday from 5 to 7 p.m. We just chill and share each other's progress there. We got some workshops. We even have something called the weekly art prompts for those who want to practice rather their art skills. We even have some documents for reference if anyone feels lost without the help of an exec. And the important one, game jams. And we'll elaborate on these even further down the presentation. So workshops, tutorials / discussions, presentations, however you want to call it. Other than our weekly meetings, some people are just really passionate with what they specialize in game development. I, for one, am very passionate about game design, the making of mechanics and systems and all that. And sometimes members who are just as passionate as this are able to approach an exec, even exec themselves, and ask for a presentation day. Basically, if anybody here is familiar with the game developers conference, it's something like that, where it's a formal presentation talking about something in game development, be it level design analysis, programming tutorials, and even guest speakers from the game development industry. Some professionals from the industry actually hop into the game general chat and share some opportunities, even some internships right now. And recently I got accepted into an internship because of the Game Design Club, and all of that can be found in there. These are some remnants of the level design analysis presentation I did there. And we even teach Unity in terms of programming.
Okay. And for more art-oriented side of the club, we have weekly art prompt, or as we call it short, it's called work. So basically, we have an open list of work that everyone from the server can contribute to it. And every week we will randomly select a word, and that's the prompt for the week. And everyone can submit their artwork related to the prompt, however they interpret it. These are some example of the word that were picked and some example artwork as well. So you can see right here. Next, I will talk about game jams, which is an integral part of our club. So normally a game will take months or even years to finish, but game jams are the event where you basically try to condense all of those into a very short time span from 48 hours to a whole week. So the goal is not to make a full-fledged polished game, it's just to present a playable prototype at the end of the event. These are often team-based, but you can always go in by yourself. And all the games are showcased at the end of the event. So our club often gather information about ongoing game jams and relay that to our members to and help them form teams and even join the team ourselves. We also have our own game jam called text-based game jams, and here is one of the product that like one of our members made for that jams. And game jams are very great opportunity for a seasoned dev or even like beginner to join and start on some skill that they want to learn.
And just trying to segue into the game jam portions, we understand some people could some people could use more assistance as well, even without the execs being there. Well, you're in luck. In our Discord, I must say it's pretty organized. We have a lot of referral links, or even not referral reference links, or a channel designated for a specific kind of thing you need in game development. So whenever you need a team, we got team building channel right here, visual inspiration, the art zone, even programming help. You couldn't figure out how recursion works like me. Well, it's also right there. And I must say that one's actually very active. And yeah, and we even have this thing called the super document, where under useful links, there lies a document that has a list of a lot of suggestions from us executives for new developers and experienced developers alike, to get you started on whatever it is you're trying to learn in game development. Yeah, I must say this is a very good resource we have going on in our our club Discord. So now we're going to talk about some testimonies from our experiences, because we can give you we can talk to you a lot about the events we have, but I suppose it's also very important to learn about the personal experiences of other members.
Okay, so I will talk about my experience. So before joining the game design club, I mainly focus on the technical side of making a game, like software that you use and programming languages and stuff. And joining the club opened me to like the other side, the social side of game dev. Joining game jam, talk about other people's project and helping people with stuff like technical stuff, so programming. And I would say that's a very fun time for me. Next, I have like another testimony from another person from the club. He's also an exec. So, like to quote him right here, he said, joining the club opened him to a lot of like new learning experience and also new people that may become like important figure in his life, I guess. And yes, he now learned a lot of new skill that he will continue to use in the future.
And then about my experience with this club. And then about my experience with this club is that I must say it's really really good. I have a history actually with another game development group back in the Philippines because I'm Filipino and I migrated over here about 4 years ago. I was kind of lonely in terms of game development because I actually work I like to work best under collaboration and socializing, sharing what I tried to make. And I was looking for such a thing here in Canada, and I found it when I met some of the cool members of the game design club at MRU for a game jam once. And I must say, when I entered the game design club, it is a very welcoming club. They taught me so many new things, and they brought me so many opportunities as well to learn and grow, and even garner some experience in terms of a career thing as well. Because of all the game companies and internships that I tried to sign up for. And it's also very fun to see all the unique projects of a lot of members as well, and that we will showcase very soon as well. And yeah, I just personally for me, it's a very nice club to just join and hang out and find out and just talk about game development. And yeah, when I meant very soon by showing you guys some games, I meant like very soon. This right here is our game showcase. What's a game design club without any games, right? And we want to show you some of the cool projects that our members are working on right now, and some even released. So this one right here is called VSCS2. It is created by one of our members, Oliver Moorish, and fun fact, this game actually had a history as VSCS1 because it's VSCS2, but as a class project about security. I believe Oliver at this time was taking a security course at the UFC. He's graduated now, and he made VSCS1 for the project of that particular class. And right now, he's working on this narrative game about using an upgraded 80s operating system to find out the fate of the dark web. And it is set for release for 2022 that can be currently wishlisted on Steam using this QR code right here. It's a really cool game. I suggest you guys wishlist it and even play VSCS1 on itch. And this is one of the coolest simulators I've ever gotten to witness its progression of. We like to call it the Unfinished Space Game by Mark Caldas. We always bug Mark about this. It's a really cool simulator, man. It's an open world simulator using procedurally generated stars and planets, and they're up to scale, by the way. These are like apparently 1-to-1. And recent developments have shown that the stars are capable now of making galaxies and even ringed planets, as you can see here. We always bug Mark to like finish the game. Mark, when are you gonna work on the Unfinished Space Game? It's hilarious, and the more we see of this game, the more we are just in awe. This one right here is called Ruptured by our good member Dan. It's a 2D platformer where players shift between the two worlds of the same level. It has its sorry, throat. It has its history as a school project as well, very similar to VSCS1, and it is planned for a full release as well, although we do not know when. But really cool thing about this is that from its foundations as a school project, Dan actually rebuilt this current version you see right now from the ground up. And I must say the game is so much better now. At the moment, the link here may say Ruptured Alpha, but it's actually in its beta stages right now. And you can learn all about it through the QR code right here, because he has a very active Discord community. And now Ruptured now comes with a level editor that you can submit to the developer, and hopefully, who knows, maybe your level might also be a thing if it inspires Dan, you know. Yeah. And this is one of the games that you can play right now. It's made by me. It's called Gaze into the Cheese Pit. This was made in 3 days for the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam 2021. And get this, this is the concept. An arcade game about feeding an eldritch alien maw grilled cheese. Like, how crazy is that for a guy who doesn't for a program that's just about squares and triangles and just shooting lines of bullets? I just like made this silly concept all in 3 days, and that's what happens in Game Jam, right? It's magic, and you guys are free to try it out using the QR code down below. Up here actually, and the link down below. Yeah, I must say it's also a pretty fun game. One of the better games I've made. So in conclusion, we are essentially a social club. We have so many we have a big variety of members from different disciplines that we constantly learn, that we constantly try to learn about. And then we all just share all these amazing ideas with each other, and we even teach them the skills if they're just starting out, what's necessary for game development, and we provide them a lot of resources and events needed to improve themselves even further. And not just for them as well, it's also for us execs as well. It's really cool to just learn all these new things the older the club gets. So yeah, that's our conclusion. We hope for you to join us or check us out. Again, more QR codes down below. And yes, it's nice meeting you all. Any questions?